Welcome back everyone to part 4 of this sample lab video series. In parts 1, 2, and 3, we got around to breaking up some of our IP addresses and assigning them to our departments. So far, our headquarter department required 25 IP addresses, and we were able to give them a block of 32 IP addresses. So this department is already satisfied its requirement for our IP addresses. This department, the sales department, required 75, but so far we've only allotted 64. Same thing for the marketing department, which required 75 IPs, but we have only so far allotted for 64 IP addresses. The department services requires 10, and we've not allotted any. So the amount of IP addresses that we've used and what's remaining is up here. So up here we've used this range of IP, which is from 128 to 159. If you look down here, we've assigned it here. So all we have left in terms of our unassigned IP addresses are these 3 blocks of 32 IP addresses, which is a total of 96 IP addresses remaining. So what we're going to do is see if we could break these down into blocks of 16, which we could add to 16 to sales to satisfy that requirement, 16 to marketing to satisfy that requirement, and another 16 to department services, which will also satisfy that requirement. So let's see if we could set that up for you right now by copying these blocks and moving it over. So we go over here and we're going to make a new notation for these blocks of IP addresses. And we're going to go to our bit borrowing formula. So in order to go to blocks of 16, we're going to have to borrow 4 bits. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 bits borrowed, and 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros remaining. So that would be, if we use the ones, which tells you how many segments you're breaking it up into, it would be 2 to the 4th, and that will give you 16 total segments, and 2 to the 4th again, because you have 4 zeros, and that will also give you 16 IP addresses per segment. All right. So that would be that, and then let's just calculate the subnet mask while we're here. So it's 255.255.255 dot, and for this one you could either minus the total usable IP addresses from 256, or you could add the values of these ones. So let's do that quickly. So we could show that one more time. So it's 256 minus, and in this case we have 16 IP addresses per block, and so we'll have a subnet mask of 249. That's 256 minus the 16 IP addresses. Oh, sorry. So it's 240. So you have 256 total IP addresses minus the 16 usable IP addresses that we calculated for this, and we get a subnet mask of 240. The other way to do it is to simply add the values of the one. So you're going to add 128, which is the first value, plus a 64, plus a 32, plus a 16, and that will give you 240. So your subnet mask is 255.255.255.240, and that gives you blocks of IP addresses with 16 IP addresses each. So I do like that. So what I'm going to do now is to list those 16 IP addresses. So if we take the first remaining block, which is from 160, I would say, yeah, let's do that from from 160 to 191. Yeah, we could probably change that into 16 IP addresses. All right, so let's do that. Do that here. So the first block is going to go from 192.168.1.160, and we're going to add 15 to that, so that's going to go to 192.168.1.75. 160 to 175, I'm sorry. And that will be a total of 16 usable IP addresses in that particular block. And the second block would go from 192.168.1.176, and then that would go to 192.168.1. and you can add 15 to that, and that would bring you to 191. Sorry, 191. And that would be 16 IP addresses. Okay, so that looks good. So what we've done so far is we've taken this range that goes from 160 to 191, and we've broken that range down into these two sets of 16 IP addresses, which goes from 160 to 175 and from 176 to 191. We need those IP addresses, so what we're going to do is to add those IP addresses to LAN 2, and right, so here's where it gets tricky, because you can't add another network to this router. So what we'd have to do is, in order to accomplish this, is to add another router. So let's do that. So since we're going to do that to this side, we're going to have to delete this line temporarily. Then we're going to go in here and we're going to add our generic router to here. Here we go. We're probably going to have to add another switch, 24 port switch. And we're also gonna have to add just add a couple of generic PCs. So we're gonna add 1 and 2. So again, let's go to some cables. So let's do this quickly. So we're gonna add from here cables, pass through cables. We're gonna add this one to this switch on port 10. We're going to add another cable to connect this PC right here to this switch, port 11. And we're going to connect the router on fast Ethernet 0 to port 1 on this switch. Now, both of these routers together are in the sales department. So we're going to change this to sales department. Sales department. And this is going to give you an additional 16 IP addresses. Here we go. So we like this. We do. Okay. So now we have a sales department with an additional, with 75, a second sales department router with an additional 64 IP addresses, which goes to a switch, which has additional computers on it. So now we could go ahead and connect these two routers together. So from left to right, this is go from serial 2 to serial 3 on this router, and again from serial 2 left to right to serial 3 on this particular router. And that looks fairly good, maybe a little confusing, but fairly good. So now all we have to do is make a note that this is the IP address block that we're going to use. We're going to use for 16, we're going to use 160 to 175, which gives us 16 IP addresses. So let's do this quickly. We're going to grab a notation, we're going to put it down here, and this is going to be LAN 2B, let's call it that. And again, it's from 192.168.1.160, and it's going to go to 192.168.1.175, and it's going to be a total of 16 IP addresses. And we calculated a subnet mask of 240 for that. Okay, there we go. So we are definitely making progress, and progress is good. Slowly but surely. Hopefully this is pretty clear so far. So here we go. All right, so these two routers are part of the sales department, a 75 and a 16. The marketing department still has the same issue. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the second block of 16 IP addresses and to do the same things for the sales department. So we're going to delete this line temporarily. We're going to install another generic router here to add our additional 16 IP addresses. We're gonna also add another switch, and we're gonna add a sample PC, and we're gonna connect these together using straight through cable. So we're gonna go from here, we're gonna go on port 10 for this switch to the fast Ethernet, and again from the router on fast Ethernet 0 to the switch on fast Ethernet 1. And then we're going to use our clocking cable to go left to right from 2 to port 3 on this router, and we're going to go from port 2 to port 3 on this router. And that gives us the additional IP addresses that we would need for the marketing department. Let's add another PC just so you can see that this PC is also in the marketing department. And marketing department now has 4 PCs living side by side. Let's go from 0, and this gets connected to this PC. So there we go. We now have 4 PCs in the marketing department. They have on this LAN, you showing 64, and so we just have to make another notation for the LAN that we're creating with the additional 16 IP addresses. So over here, we'll make this notation as LAN 3B, and 3B is going to go from .1.176 to .1.176 to 191, and this is going to be a total of 16 IP addresses. So there we go. It's looking good, looking really good actually. So we have LAN B3 and LAN 3 over here. This is notation for LAN 4. We're going to put that over there. So LAN 3 has 64 IP addresses, with a subnet mask of 192. Is that correct? Yes. And LAN 4 has 16 IP addresses with a subnet mask we calculated as 240. There we go. So we have 240, which gives you 16 addresses. 16 plus 64 is 76, almost 80 IP addresses. And we only needed, for this particular LAN, we only needed 75. So let's change the name of this to make it consistent as marketing department. And this one got 16 IP addresses. Okay. So that looks good to me for now. We still have to assign another 16 to here and get some IP addresses for these LANs over here. And since we've already used these, we still have 2 more blocks. We used the block from 160 to 191, which is that one up there. And we have these 2 blocks of IP addresses that are still usable. So before I stop the video, let me just copy these out so we know what are still usable. So in our next video, we will be using these IP addresses. So these are the ones we have not used. We're going to copy those out. Wait a second, what did I do? These two blocks of IP addresses. We're going to copy those out, and then we're going to put them in here. Why it's not pasting? I don't, oh, computer's slow, throwing me off here. Okay. So the IP addresses that are not yet been used is 192 to 255. So 192, 32 block goes to up to 223, and another block from 224 goes up to 225. Okay, so that should be the blocks of IP addresses that are still remaining. And you could see that these block of IP addresses are identical to the 2 remaining blocks of IP addresses that we did not use. The first block of IP addresses, we did split that 32 into 2 16 IP addresses blocks, and we used them here and here. All right, so I'm going to stop the video now, and we're going to go to the next video. We're going to show you everything else. And this was a long video. This is almost 18 minutes. I apologize for that, but I'll see you in the next video.